This M2 CS has carbon ceramic brakes, Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, and a $111,000 sticker. The brakes want heat the street won't give them. The tires want a temp that only shows up on a track. Every expensive decision on this car points to a place most owners will never take it. Most will give it a coffee run, a good back road, and a garage spot with very flattering lighting. The question never was whether this is fast. 523 horsepower already handled that. The question is whether BMW built the best M2 for the place you'll use it, or the best M2 for the place you keep saying you'll go. The previous M2 CS was available with a manual gearbox, and a good number of M2s today leave the factory with 3 pedals. This CS gives customers one gearbox, the 8-speed automatic, but the argument for it is stronger than the outrage. The manual M2 has always been the detuned M2, a little less torque to avoid grenading the clutch or the gearbox. Even BMW's own engineers are on record saying the manual is slower around a circuit, and that I can't argue with. The M2 that chased lap times isn't the one that carried a third pedal. The manual was the one you bought for engagement against the spec sheet. This CS isn't making that trade available. What's bolted to the engine is an essential part of this package: engine mounts from the M4 CSL and transmission mounts from the M4 GT4 race car, and all of this hardware is immediately noticeable. On the other hand, the S58's internals didn't change. It's still the same one that you get in the regular M2. Compared to that regular M2, this has an additional 50 horsepower that was delivered as software. Think of it this way: the CS unlocks maximum power like you'd unlock a feature on your smartphone. And the figure that it lands on, 523 horsepower, is the same as the all-wheel drive M3 and M4 competition. Peak torque of 479 pounds of it arrives at 2750 RPM and carries all the way through to 5,730 RPM, which on a short wheelbase rear-wheel drive coupe means the rear differential might be doing some math that disagrees with the road surface, if you catch my drift. For me, though, this package, short wheelbase and all, is exactly to my liking. Power oversteer is indeed available, and the shorter wheelbase just makes this sharper all around. On paper, the wheelbase is actually about 4 inches shorter than the M3. When it's warm and dry, there's no trouble getting all of that power and torque to the ground. On a cold morning, like it was this morning, you have to be tentative with the throttle and get to about 30 or 40% throttle, and you're instantly breaking traction under acceleration with those Cup 2s in the cold. Thankfully, stability and traction systems are ready to step in and save you from any major trouble, and on the street, that's a big part of this car's story. This M2 CS gets specific calibration for that electronically controlled limited slip diff, and traction control now runs in 10 stages because the engineers decided that on and off didn't adequately capture the spectrum of ways in which you could embarrass yourself. There's also M-Drift Analyzer, which saves your drifts and scores them. An electronic locking diff with adjustable slip angles on a 523 horsepower rear drive coupe is real engineering. Bolting a drift scoreboard to it is BMW remembering that its customers have social media accounts. This is what I like: 523 horsepower, rear drive only, and no all-wheel drive to bail me out. This must be the one M car that's universally applauded on the internet. Right up to the first cold damp on-ramp that reminds everyone what 500 horsepower does to a track compound tire at 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Everyone else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to find out when new videos drop on this channel, well, that's what the subscribe button does. The retuned steering still doesn't put feel in your hands. The rack is synthetic, it's strong on center, and then you feel it load up with more steering lock. And it says almost nothing about what the front tires are doing. Thankfully, feedback from the chassis is loud and clear. It is precise, however, combined with the changes in alignment, the changes in the suspension components, and the Cup 2s, this front end goes exactly where you point it. It's the sharpest M2 to date, and it might be the sharpest thing coming out of Munich wearing an M badge. Feel never arrives, but the rack is so precise, you don't even bother looking for it. Feedback from the chassis comes through the seat, and as long as you're paying attention, it is high fidelity feedback. You can feel exactly what's going on at each of the 4 contact patches. In the corners, when we're hustling, this thing is perfectly and finely balanced. It's not on a knife edge because it's not like that. It's just wonderfully balanced, and if you can stay on top of this car, it is rewarding at or beyond its limits. And for me, it responds perfectly. Trail brake into a corner, the nose tucks in, the rear starts to rotate a little, and depending on when you come off the brake and start picking up that throttle, you can easily get power on oversteer, and it's beautifully balanced. Part of the credit goes to that E-diff, and they are magic when done right, and this one is done right. Through the corners, it responds the way you want to drive. If you want to carry a perfectly balanced 4-wheel drift, it'll do that. If you want power on oversteer, or a drift for that matter, it'll do that too. One thing about the steering wheel, yes, it has a thick rim, and the internet will tell you that it will tire your hands. And I'll let you in on something. A steering wheel will only tire the hands that fight it. Steer with a light touch like I do, let the steering system do its work, and the rim thickness disappears by the first corner. A thick rim only punishes a heavy grip, which tells you more about the hands than the wheel. Even short of using them to their full capacity, the carbon ceramics combined with the forged wheels take a load of unsprung weight out of this M2 CS. And you feel it everywhere in terms of wheel control, because with less unsprung weight, the dampers have to work just a little less hard. This sits 8 millimeters lower than a regular M2. The dampers are recalibrated, and the engine mounts are stiffer in this CS. And in this situation, the usual story is you've got profound mechanical drivetrain buzz being piped directly into the cabin. And I drove the M4 CSL, and with its stiffer engine mounts, it was the poster child for massive engine vibration coming into the cabin. This car doesn't do that. You do feel that the drivetrain is mounted stiffer to the chassis than in another M2, but it's always composed and never intrusive. The ride quality isn't ruined. It's still very compliant, surprisingly, and it's happy to absorb mid-corner bumps. No matter the attitude of the car, what part of the corner that I'm in, it is very happy to deal with the corners. Just perfect through here. Tracks wonderfully, absorbs the bumps, transition on the brakes, off the brakes, back onto the throttle. Absolutely perfect. This package is dialed. Overly stiff suspensions are happy to skip over bumps, and that's not a good thing. You always want the tire in contact with the road, so I have set this to the softest damping mode, and it does a fantastic job of ensuring the tires stay in contact with the road. I have driven this on some nasty stuff, and yes, it bothers it a little bit, might be a little skittish on potholed, pockmarked roads of Toronto, but on back roads like this, it's absolutely delightful. Right off the top, we talked about the promise of carbon ceramics, and here's what the spec sheet can't promise. They're engineered to work hot, and stopping power is not in short supply. There's more of it than any public road will ever ask for. I think this is the shortest stopping car I've ever driven. Full ABS stops. This thing literally stops on a dime, or a fraction of a dime. Plus, under full ABS, this thing is incredibly stable. You have all the confidence in the world in this braking system. The way they've calibrated it to work, however, is interesting because there's very little intrusion. Even when you're hustling this through the corners, getting into some heavy braking, ABS doesn't show up. It simply stays ready in the background in case you need it. Because this is a brake-by-wire car, I always set the brakes to the firmer pedal setting. It's just the logical way to do things when you're enjoying a high-performance car like this. But the one thing they don't talk about is cold pedal feel with these carbon ceramics. Without any heat in them, the pedal feels kind of wooden. When they do have heat in them, however, that pedal is magic. Bite is strong, and I can control the attitude precisely on corner entry. And anytime they're hot, feel, control, modulation, all 10 out of 10. And until they're hot, that carbon ceramic brake line on the invoice is doing more work than the brakes ever will on a public road, which is the whole argument of this car in one $8,500 box. The Cup 2 is the tire that BMW will sell you as standard equipment, massive tread blocks and all. Owners say that with these tires, the car tram lines and it'll follow ruts in the road. So I went hunting for it on freeways and lots of back roads, and on only very few occasions did this CS do that. And here's the thing, below about 45 Fahrenheit, these Cup 2s have the effective durometer of a hockey puck. And in standing water, this is a tire you treat with reverence in the true sense of the word. One of the buff books measured this on the skid pad, and it eked out 1.08 Gs laterally, making it the grippiest BMW they've ever tested. The grippiest BMW ever is the least useful thing to know about this car when driving it on the road, because you'll never see the far side of that number, and you shouldn't go looking either. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, the merch store is open, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this and a little less time worrying about industry access. No pressure, just an option. It seems like BMW designed these seats for one specific human body, and whether you bought the right car depends on whether you possess that body. The hard shell and the ridge running between your legs are the most common complaint from owners and media alike. And it seems like most people who file that complaint are over 6 feet tall or broad in the shoulders, or the women in my life, all of whom complain about the shape of these seats. I'm none of those, so me and the seats get along. Real support, I'm very comfortable, and my back, whose MRIs say that I should disagree with every seat, have nothing to say about this one. Getting in is easy, getting out is when you remember these seats are shaped like track shells. If your body matches their geometry, then they're faultless. If it doesn't, then no amount of padding or carbon fiber is going to help you. BMW survived the iDrive years, won people over with this controller, and then here decided to move the climate controls behind the touchscreen. And heated seats too. In a 523 horsepower car on Cup 2s, adjusting the temperature shouldn't be a touchscreen audition. I think the only major control that's still analog left in this cabin is the steering wheel. And even that in 2026 seems like it survived a committee vote. The steering wheel finished in Alcantara with the red ring at 12 o'clock is the right call for this car. The only thing I don't care for is this flat bottom bit. Standard spec includes a heads-up display, there's augmented reality navigation, then the M lap timer and the drift scorer. Track mode kills the sound system audio and strips the dash right back to lap time data only. Unequivocally, all of that assumes a buyer for this car who's going to track it. Inside, the CS badging turns up everywhere. The door sills, the door panels, the console. And I think BMW lit up the letters C and S more times than this thing has cup holders. None of this punishes you day to day. The worst thing is that you have to remember to climb out of the seat instead of simply stepping out of it. It's still more car than your commute was ever going to ask for. If this episode gave you more information than a brochure or a press release, hit like. It tells YouTube to share this episode with other people like you interested in an episode like this. Takes just a second. Before the beauty shots, we have to pay the beauty tax, and that's because for the last hour, this M2 CS has been doing M2 CS things, and every panel looks like a crime scene finished in velvet blue metallic. This episode is brought to you by GoClean. I use their waterless car wash because it gets the car camera ready quickly, and because if I thought this was going to scratch the paint, this segment would be about something safer, like floor mats for people who think weather is a personality. Spray first, clean towel. Let the product lift the road film. Buff because it's got a built-in wax. No dry wiping, no heroics. Just get the evidence off the paint before the camera finds it. I use it, I like it, and it's in my kit on every shoot. GoClean.ca, use code MAX15 for 15% off. That's what the M2 CS told me, but press loans don't last long enough to understand what owners experience when they live with the G87, and a few things keep popping up in the forums. The oil cooler sits low behind a plastic guard, and owners document rocks punching through it. The manual M2 gets a radiator mesh, the automatics don't. Worth contemplating because the CS is automatic only, which means the hardest driven M2 in the range left the factory with the least stone protection in it, and thankfully the aftermarket's got your back here. Then the cold weather question turns into a tire bill. A Cup 2 is the wrong tire for climates north of anywhere temperate, and the wrong tire for standing water unless you enjoy making small corrections with large implications. So anyone dailying a CS in an actual four-season climate is buying another set of wheels and tires almost immediately, not as a mod, as part of taking delivery responsibly. And the carbon ceramics, the squeal that owners mention, isn't automatically a fault. BMW treats some of that as normal behavior. This tester had about 3,000 miles on it and never made a sound. That's useful info, but it's not exactly a sound conclusion. The forums are already saying, give it time. Run that list and it's consistent because every entry on that list is a spec decision, and every spec decision's reversible on the order sheet. The car's good, we know that, and the spec depends on how you're going to use it. If you have one on order or already have one of these in your garage, let me know what spec you went with because I'm very curious if you went with something sensible or a maximalist spec like this. This M2 CS has a rival, but it's not what you think. It's sitting across the showroom, the base M2 with the same engine, $30,000 cheaper, and wearing the options that BMW won't let the CS delete. Beat that car on a road, not a stopwatch, and then we'll talk. On the road, this M2 CS is better than the spec sheet threatens. The chassis is composed when the brochure says it should be punishing on anything but a racetrack. The steering points this car to exactly where you ask, but then admits to none of it. The stiff engine and transmission mounts that should have buzzed this cabin never did. BMW's done some excellent engineering here, and then I think where this CS misses is in the parts that touch the road, the consumables. A tire that needs a track to reach optimal temp and brakes that need heat that the street can never provide. Buy it right and the problem solves itself. Steel brakes, the no-cost summer tire option if there are any left to order, and a separate set of wheels with Cup 2s and track pads for the day you stop talking about going. That's the dual-purpose CS, the one BMW would have built if it trusted you to drive it on the road first. BMW built a very serious car for the version of you that has a helmet bag. The rest of us have to spec our way back to the street. That's the M2 CS. Subscribe if you want to see more of these. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree. And the merch store link is here if you want to help fund more of these. See you on the next one.